Hello and welcome to episode 201 of the ANF podcast from the ANF Network with me, Scott Casson-Rennie, Mr. Al Coates, MBE, whatever he is.
Hello. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. And tonight we're very privileged yet again to welcome back our regular guest. Well, I'll say regular. She cheated on us with somebody else. It actually looked really nice as
What?
well, sitting on comfy sofas and proper
Cheated on you with
microphones.
the social worker and the mentor podcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah,
They're
it
really
looked cool.
cool. Those
Yeah,
guys.
it did.
Super
But
cool.
let me finish. Let me finish my introduction though, because we're joined by Foster Wiki Waz, Sarah Anderson tonight. See, I've been practicing all day.
Couldn't resist.
Have you
Couldn't
been
resist.
have
Yeah,
you
she
been
was cheating on
houking
us.
yourself? You houking yourself around the internet with some young upstarts. Tell me about this podcast you've been on.
It was
Social
very
worker and the
professional.
mentor, they're absolutely amazing. Actually, I had their Isabel Trowler on last week. So, have you had her on yet?
Mm.
No, I didn't want her on. I've had Santa on. The OG.
I'm in a frock, so nobody will notice.
Yeah,
Shave
no,
his
they're
beard.
really, really cool guys. Really cool guys.
Oh well, that's you off my Christmas card list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't listen to it all, but I have to say, I was quite impressed. I'd like the setup of it. I would love to be able to do that kind of setup, but we just obviously been in separate countries doesn't really bode well for trying that, does it?
It doesn't,
But
no.
it's very similar to the kind of effect that we're going to be trialing with another podcast that I'm going to be doing, because you're not the only one that likes to cheat, Sarah. You know, on
Oh, is this
podcasts.
news to you, Al?
Yeah.
This is
Well,
breaking news.
Well, he's been hosting some other dodgy one from somewhere else. In fact, two, I think, over the last couple of months. Yeah.
It's all turned very ugly.
Yeah, very quick.
It feels like a good moment to move on. Hello, Sarah.
Yeah, but this is what happened when you come on, Sarah. We become disruptors.
Yeah.
So we get very disruptive and
I'm
very
a really bad influence on
yeah,
the
picking
absolutely.
it up.
And can I just say as well, because normally when we do a podcast, we do it later, but we're actually doing it really early because it's
I
5
know.
o'clock because of your bedtime.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I can't do it if it's after 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And this was a stretch, I tell you. I was slumped on the sofa earlier after me meatballs and chips.
Whatever time do you eat?
Well, I like to eat quite early because I go to bed early. So if I eat
Well, true.
late,
Yeah.
I'm lying in bed with a big full tummy.
Okay. See, I was just struggling to get out of the car park at 4:45, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be late." But there you go. Whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
I can get up incredibly early, though.
Yeah.
I bet this cutting, thrusting, inquisitory questioning line was not on the other podcast. I bet it was just all la-di-da.
They just don't know me well enough yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They wouldn't have gotten
okay.
away with it on the first one. They might on the second one.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I came over all like grown up and
Yeah, it made sure you didn't have soup stains down your front and all that kind of thing. Sarah, you've had a really busy year, and I think we've initially invited you on in terms of the allegations report that you did in the autumn, which is quite a while ago. But by the time we got our schedules together, but I'm aware that actually it's been a really busy year. So looking back across 2024, you've been incredibly busy. What are the high points, and what are some of the things that you've been pushing forwards across the year?
I think the high point, without a shadow of a doubt, was our survey, which we launched in March, the Independent Foster Carer Survey. It was a gamble because sometimes, these things, if you only get 200 people reply, it falls flat and you're like, oh no, and then the government can say, oh, nothing to see here then, after saying it. Anyway, and it had to be a real grassroots effort because the local authorities and agencies wouldn't share it.
I shared it,
which I thought was very disappointing. Actually,
I remember you saying that when you were on. Actually,
they wouldn't share it. So we have spoken about it since, haven't we? Yeah, but so anyway, everybody rallied round. It was an extraordinary moment for me. When you say what my high points are, the high point of that was finally foster carers were like, we do want to have a voice. And they've usually so scared to speak out, but I think they trusted FosterWiki's independence in terms of, they're very, very suspicious and very, very nervous, foster carers, of giving an opinion on anything. So, I mean, they will give you an opinion on something, but not publicly. So I was just so proud of them all. They all sort of stepped forward to give us their truths, and so that was a phenomenal moment. We've been making progress on the National Foster Carers qualifications, and we've also developed a new independent assessment process, as you know, but they're all live now, and they're slowly being taken up, mostly by agencies, a lot by new agencies, which is great. It went through its first Ofsted, the National Foster Carers qualifications, and the new integrated assessment process, and it was the first Ofsted inspection. This organisation, very small agency, just started up, and they got they got good, I think, and so that was a great reflection for us that we had been part of that process. So that was very exciting.
Can I ask you a few questions about that, because people may not be aware? But so, in terms of the normal assessment process for a foster carer, it's the form that is used universally is the Form F, which is the Quorum Bath document. So, how does your assessment pro forma change by comparison? What are the contrasting elements?
I mean, one of the things people say if they're going to criticise or say something about it is, oh, great, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, it's just, but if it was a condensed version of the Form F and it took 10 weeks, then I'd be there agreeing with everybody and saying that's not okay. I'm also got, as you know, a psychotherapeutic background, and so I've looked at it very much from a sort of mental health point of view and an actual point of view of, the deep dives into people's backgrounds. How useful are they by people who aren't trained in that? I'm not saying that social workers aren't trained to assess carers. They are, but I'm not sure about that bit. And I've always been wary of that, because I don't think it's effective. I also don't think it's effective speaking to every partner going back 30 years. Boyfriends and so, I mean, it's an ex-partner for a reason.
Yeah.
And very often, so you're not really going to get the most, reliable thing out of that. And often it puts the power into people's hands that it really shouldn't, in terms of that. So anyway, but what I also have always been worried about is that we're getting some people into fostering on a single assessor model, which means it's one person's frame of reference, one person's opinion, one person's ideals, and also one person's time frame. It's not, as far as I'm concerned, and don't forget I've been through a couple myself, it's not a strengths-based operation. It's more of a sort of inquisition. I often think that if I failed to be a foster carer, I could always go into MI5, but it isn't. I think the criticisms are, it won't be thorough enough, or you won't. But actually, the way we've done it, we've also front-loaded it with people. It's not going to take anybody any longer. It's going to take fewer people doing it less, if you know what I mean. But also, what it does is it doesn't rely on the National Foster Carers Foundation qualification is woven into that assessment, and we truly believe that you should have that kind of quality assessment, and come out the other end an accredited foster carer. It's very accessible, the foundation course, but it's also thorough, and it also includes 2 trauma-informed modules as well. It's very thorough. Now, what happens during the assessment is you have several group sessions referring back to the learning that's going on with that as well. So also we see our assessment as a beginning, not an end to itself. And in many cases, we've been able to integrate the supervising social worker into the assessment process, so that when the foster carer is then approved, they don't have this sudden change to somebody who doesn't know much about them except reading the singular assessor thing. Also panel. Panel. I know it's not a popular view, I know, but I really think we need to reassess the role of panel. In the assessment, for instance, you go to panel, the single assessor assesses you on their one frame of reference, which is undoubtedly going to be cognitively affected by their own, ideas and thoughts, and it can't not happen. So that's why it's great to have several people in that appraisal who might pick something up that somebody else hasn't. And then we also have somebody doing admin, so that the people doing the assessments aren't having to do the admin bit, which is all the forms and the finding references and all that kind of stuff. And then what happens is with the normal, the Form F type style of assessments, I know a lot of people doing their own now, is you get this sort of wrapped up in a bow and it goes to panel, and panel do in 45 minutes. What are they really going to do? They don't know those people. The first time they met them, they'll be on their best behaviour. They ask them, I can write the panel questions now because they're pretty standard. And in my allegations as well, they're pretty standard. So I don't see, and the ADM has the final decision anyway. So jury's out with me. I don't think that system works that way around. And I also don't think that it prepares a foster carer well. I don't think it brings them out confident and self-assured and, ready to go, and also in a learning frame of mind. So I think this is just a beginning. It's a bit like if social workers go and do their thing before they become social workers.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because I think that we've done it this way for so long that it's almost become, it's dogma, isn't it? That this is the way we do it. Even like the Form F assessment, it isn't a statutory instrument. It's a statutory assessment.
A membership organisation sell their wares,
Yeah,
and it's their version of it. I spoke to the DfE about it because I was a bit puzzled, and I thought we've really got to. I said to them, well, look, we really need to reassess the whole Form F thing. I just don't think it's modern enough. It's not working. We aren't getting the quality of carers we need through. And in a year's time, a third of them are gone. Something's going wrong here. The outcomes aren't great. The kids are getting bounced around. And he said, well, it's nothing to do with us. And I went, oh, I was so convinced it was set in statute because it's,
Yeah.
I think a lot of agencies tend to think of it that way, even though it's not. I think that, in a similar way, a lot of agencies do think that is the model, that is the golden goose egg, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
We have too much of that in fostering, too much of it. Not enough curiosity, not enough changing,
And it's interesting because even before it was Coram-Bath, it was Bath. It was Bath's template, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly. And the same for for adoption as well. So it's Coram-Bath form as well. And I was just going to comment on the panels there as well, because I think we've talked about panels a couple of times. And I think that what's interesting about panels over the years and how they've changed is, and I can say this now because I don't sit on one, but I do find them far too fluffy as well. And I'm not saying that we should be kind of putting thumb screws on and shining bright lights into people's eyes. But what I'm saying is, you're right, Sarah. It's the same questions, unless there's something really specific that's come up in the paperwork or the assessment that actually And I'm thinking about our kinky Yanks, as Al calls them.
You can't call them that.
I just did. The kinky Yanks from America, obviously. That we're in a polyamorous whatever it was, and I'm just thinking of polytunnel. Yeah, that's it.
I've got.
And I'm just thinking how that would work in terms of a panel actually feeling able to kind of have that open discussion. Excuse me, instead of just deferring panel, because do you know what I mean? It's all these kinds of things.
I mean, it's just lip service at the moment, and also it has no teeth because the ADM makes the final decision anyway. It's only a recommendation, and I appreciate that the people on the panel come from different professions and everything, but why? This should be really fostering specific. It shouldn't be about an accountant sitting on the panel or a lawyer or whatever. I don't get that. This should be a professional panel of probably social workers and foster carers. But I'm not saying there shouldn't be a check. I'm not saying there shouldn't be checks and balances here, because people go, oh, panel does it. I'm just saying panel isn't the answer. And as I say, there is not enough professional curiosity in what we are doing now and how we're doing it and why at the root of it we're failing so badly at the moment.
Well, I've just recently, I mean, we're so not even on topic yet, but let's lean into it because it's, you know, the night is young and Santa's still with us.
Surprise.
I've just recently resigned from panel, Scott. Did I tell you that?
Did you? No, you didn't. You don't tell me anything anymore.
You don't send me flowers, Scott.
He doesn't tell me anything anymore, Sarah. I know more from his wife than I know from him.
As it should be. No, I resigned from panel, and part of it was this sort of, and I suppose adoption panel and fostering panel are almost identical in terms of their function and role and how they operate, their structure and stuff. And just this sense of actually, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Well, this genuine sort of, the people who are on it are not necessarily, well, I'll be careful what I say. I'm not going to go back on, am I? So it's fine. I can say what I want. But kind of thinking, well, what are the qualifications of these people? And what is the relevance? We're not here to reassess. We're not here to assess people. That's been done. This is not the moment.
Yeah. What is
you know, this 45, like you say, it's 45 minutes. This isn't the moment to start going, hang on, page 2.
No, I know. It's just, yeah, I know. It's this really deep emotional attachment to everything that's oldie woldy in fostering. You know, yeah, we love the panel and all the people on the panel. I mean, it's kind of, as I say, there is no curiosity on how we can change things and make them better. And I started talking about panel like this about 2 years ago, and I was almost lynched. I mean, you have to be brave to say these things. Luckily, I don't think I was brave. I don't think I was born with a risk assessment certificate. So I've done some pretty outspoken things in the past. But a lot of the things that I did that were outspoken and vilified are now actually people are going, okay, right. And, you know, it's coming into the general conversation. I'm very pleased about that.
Yeah. So, and that's taken us to April. So, well, I guess I've got a question because in the middle of the year we had we had a change of government. So, can I ask you, in terms of your optimism and your sense of, are we in a position where the new government are going to do something different with fostering? Is there any sense of that you've got? Is what's on the air?
I'm not. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because when you work with the Department for Education and the fostering team there, you still work with the same team that you work with the other government. Yeah. And I'm not so sure that, you know, I see the children's minister, Janet Davey, and she was she was a fostering manager, actually, social work fostering manager for the biggest, most profiteering private agency, which I find quite funny because they're hammering down on those. But that was where she originated from. So for me, she'll have a fostering manager's hat on, and of course, the first thing she does is meet up with the fostering network and Mockingbird. Well, Mockingbird only, I think. I've just written an article on it, but I thought I'd leave it till after Christmas because I expect I'll get lynched again. But, you know, why the problem is that they only see foster carers have only seen foster carers through the fostering network lens up until now. Now, that is what I'm excited about this year as well. We've changed that. The Foster Wiki team now, the core team, attend after the survey. The DFE asked to meet with us bi-monthly, and we've got those booked in for the next year and a half, which I think shows a willingness to listen, but also, since we've got the data, taking us seriously. Now, I don't know how that filters up to Janet Davey, and they've got a huge body of work to do as far as children are concerned. And, you know, we had the Josh McAllister now, of course, is an MP, and he's obviously pushing his care review, which is right. And there's so much right in that care review in the terms of kinship care. I think, oh my goodness, they missed a trick in ignoring foster care. And again, this government have put in another 11 million or 15 million on top of the 36 million already invested into recruitment. And this year we saw the third year downturn of fostering numbers. Now, I'll be kind to them because they do point out that those numbers won't have, the increase from the 36 million won't have shown yet. But that just shows you about the Form F, doesn't it? Like, it takes a year to get a foster carer, through the Form F. I mean, why are we doing that? It's craziness personified,
But it does feel peculiar in terms of recruitment, and we could talk about recruitment till that's a bottomless pit. But you think actually that just throwing money at recruitment, we've seen this in adoption, is that the issues
doesn't fix anything.
It doesn't. All it does is get more people to the front door.
Mm-hmm.
And they can see what everyone else can see. That's, they go, oh no, this is not for me, and wander off. So you just got more applications to filter, but maybe they don't get beyond that initial application process, which is there are staged processes which are in statutes. So I mean, but as people like Mark always, he's kicking up some dust, isn't he, in terms of the work that he's doing? He's trying to do something different.
Who do you think he's doing that with?
Oh, don't ask me that question. It's a Wednesday just before Christmas. My mind is addled.
Who's his co-founder?
I don't know. Are you going to?
I was going to say it's probably a Mrs. Foster Wiki Wawa.
It's me. Yeah.
It's you.
I know it's. See, I don't.
Perfect. The foster care and the social worker.
Yeah,
that's how I see it. Not so much as Foster Wiki, Marcos. I see it as a fantastic model of foster carers and the social worker. We just want to draw a line in the sand and say, let's fix this. I mean, both Mark, probably even more than me, we've been going for years trying to improve fostering and, the whole landscape. And all it's done is got worse. Everybody is so deaf to hearing what needs fixing. However, I think people will be more ready to listen now because they are desperate. I'm sad that it's got to get to that stage. But what we will do is work with some innovative, forward-thinking local authorities and say, do you want to be the best fostering service in the world? Because we're giving you the chance to be that. I won't go into it more now because Mark can explain more, but it is really innovative, off the scale, new, and it's a real collaborative way of working, but empowering foster carers to, they need to be empowered, because frankly, and I don't like that word very much because it sort of suggests that there are, let's empower the foster carers. I prefer a sort of, I also shy away from using the word professional, but it's treating them professionally. And it's about mutual respect. It's about mediative kind of ways of working. It's a fabulous model. And actually, I am very, very excited about it because I think it's really got legs. And I also think that fantastic juxtaposition between Mark and his background and FosterWiki, our background, is a microcosm of what's needed in the actual local authorities and agencies, And then... what will we do then? Happy foster carers recruit other foster carers.
Well, yeah, and that's the proof of the pudding, isn't it? In the eating, that you're not going to have to spend a gazillion pounds trying to get people through the front door. People will see it in action, and communities will grow, won't they?
Yeah, and the most important thing is we're failing children.
Yeah,
I mean, we mustn't shy away from that. It's interesting whenever I talk about these things, a local authority agency. Well, it's so sad that all these other local authorities and agencies are failing children. Of course, it's not us. Our foster carers are all terribly happy. But of course, foster carers don't fill in feedback forms truthfully, if they fill them in at all. And I'm not saying everyone's bad. Of course they're not. But we know from the outcomes of our children and care leavers. I mean, it makes me mad when we've got a care leavers advisory group at Foster Wiki now, and they're really fresh out of care, a lot of them, and many of their local authorities or agencies are outstanding. And you ask them how outstanding they were. That I feel awful for them because then it makes it look like it's them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not, it must be the child. We're outstanding. I mean, that's another long conversation, isn't it, Ofsted?
Yes, you're talking to a man who's just been through Ofsted, so I'm
shattered.
I'm going to politely decline to answer that question.
Yeah. Well, what was it so nearly 70% of the carers in our survey said that their frontline experience didn't match the Ofsted ratings. 70%.
That's really, really quite terrifying. Which sort of nicely dovetails, or in not nicely, unnicely dovetails to your allegations report. Your allegations impact report, which I think is even the title tells us something, doesn't it?
Well, we've obviously, after the survey, we did more than our bi-monthly. Actually, we have several meetings with the Department of Education, and and I've never heard them say this, but one of them sort of said, "This is dire, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it is dire. I've been trying to tell people for a long time, but they've needed the data," and I understood that. But they said, "Well, the trouble is, where do you even start? Where do you start?"
Yeah.
And I said, well, one of the places you start is allegations, because it's not just somebody who's had an allegation. Bear in mind, 3,000 foster carers a year go through that. You don't get 3,000, it's 3,000 a year, but also it's, 80% plus foster carers said that allegations impact their daily role as a foster carer, i.e. they're looking over their shoulder all the time, worried about what they're doing, scared about child saying something, or scared about phone calls, and I think you probably read the report, because the tentacles of this are about the power imbalance. Because why are carers afraid of questioning or challenging services, agencies, or social workers? Because they might get an allegation against them, and that's a reality we do have to face, or one threatened. So and then it stops people advocating properly for their children, because they're afraid if they push it too hard, get an allegation against them. Because it is absolutely known throughout the whole fostering community that the allegation system is used for a lot of things other than harm to a child. The DFE's figures are 67% of the allegations are about harm to a child. They're not actually a child saying they've been harmed. And I know this is difficult to hear, but the truth is, it's a social worker saying there's been harm to a child, because we never hear what the child has said. Nobody ever hears what the child has said. They're never independently interviewed by psychologists, which they should be. There's no independent thing. A social worker can say they had a conversation with a child in the car, and that sets off all sorts of things. And it also leaves the system open to abuse.
Do you think that I'm really conscious that I'm glad you talked about children, because in the midst of all of that, you've got incredibly vulnerable children.
Really important, yeah.
And that is it that we're holding in tension these two very important things? One is that we need to protect children and take what they say seriously, but also we need to protect carers and take what they say seriously. And threading that needle, or however you want to define it, is kind of takes a system that's robust but sensitive and wise and thorough. And is it what is it that's happening that means that needle is not being threaded?
I think that there are some unpleasant truths we really have to face up to. We can't forever bury everything in the sand and say, and you've got to remember, this comes from experience. I was in a union many years ago. I was the sole person that did allegations. It was up to 2 o'clock most nights. It nearly burnt me out, and listening to all the stories. I still work with the National Union. I'm not affiliated with them, but I work with the National Union, and I speak to the casework officers quite regularly. I think we really, really have to understand that not everybody tells the truth all the time, and also social workers feel as done to as foster carers do, and we appreciate that and really understand it. It's hard for everybody, but when it's hard for everybody and something goes wrong, those with the most power are less likely to be affected or have the tools to make sure that nothing falls in their direction. And we have to face up to the fact that actually happens. Until someone, you tinker around the edges and say, well, do we need a more robust procedure? Do we need what we probably need, what I think we need, is an independent allegations system. Now, that'll obviously cost a lot of money and it's quite difficult to set up, but I don't think that those making the allegations should be investigating them as well.
But would you argue that the ladder system
protect children? Children are absolutely first, but how do we balance protecting children with protecting carers against false allegations made for the wrong reasons? One of the biggest triggers for allegations is a carer saying they want to transfer somewhere else. They make an allegation against them and they can't transfer. And
I mean, that's quite an accusation. I'm not saying
not accusation. It's actually a fact. I mean, ask the union, ask the caseworkers at the union, ask me. I've done it for long enough. I often say to carers when they've done 20 years of outstanding, work, don't forget they get annually reviewed. So, they get annually reviewed, not like everybody else. They every single year they get reviewed again and go to panel. So, and then you get a carer that's been going for 20 years and they've been on the buses, they've been the poster child for services.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden a new social worker's come along and they've not really seen eye to eye. And within weeks, they've got an allegation against them. And then so what I say to people is when they are really dumbfounded, and you can tell if people are really have dedicated their lives to fostering and have had fantastic outcomes. And I often say, what's changed recently? What have you done? Well, we fell out with our social worker and we said we're going to transfer. Didn't put an intention to transfer. So on FosterWiki, there's an absolute, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, to protect them in that situation. And we mentioned we'd rather leave and we're looking into other agencies. Bang, an allegation's come out of the blue from nowhere. And harm to a child. Now, we have to balance it because we have to protect children. I absolutely agree with you. What do you think? How can we protect it from happening?
It's a really difficult, and I know, Scott, you've got experience as well being a foster carer, but also of an allegation. Well, was it an allegation or a complaint? Because when does a complaint become an allegation? And the nature you get in fostering, you also have standard of care investigations, don't you, in terms of the quality of care being given to children? So,
but there are there are rules and regulations around that. It's just that nobody ever follows them.
Yeah, but I know the impact on us in terms of the allegation that was made against Paula. That came to nothing. Shock horror. I don't know, because we've got the LADO system, haven't we? We've got the local area decision maker, which is every local authority has a LADO, which is an appointed person whose job is to oversee those investigations. In terms of the children's workforce, that would be the same if you were a teacher.
Yeah, but they're going on the information that they're given.
Yeah, so maybe that is it, that you would the agency should appoint an independent investigator.
Yeah,
that should be if it's above a certain threshold. So in terms of harm to a child, if it's that the children have got scruffy clothes, then that's one route. But if it's an allegation of harm to a child, then I think then an independent.
I mean, an independent organisation, because let's look at this word independent. It's a shocker, because how many times I've heard of a foster carer having an independent social worker come in to review the allegation, only to find that they're not really independent at all. First of all, they're chosen by a local authority. Secondly, they're paid for by the local authority. Third, they often work in a neighbouring, team authority. Or something.
Yeah,
it's not independent at all.
I was going to say, I think that goes across most of the things that happen with whether it's fostering, adoption. When they use the word independent, what they mean by that is that they don't work for the local authority or the agency. They are appointed by them, and if some agencies don't pay, as an example, panel, independent panel members are independent because they don't work for the agency. and they're there to do it independently, but they're still being paid. Well, some are, not all. Some are being paid for their attendance, some aren't. And then on top of that, you've got, this kind of commitment to the agency who've actually given them the opportunity to sit in the panel.
And they don't make the decision anyway.
Well, and that's the thing, because the
AGM is the decider.
Yeah, and also sometimes, not all the time, because I've sat in some great panels, I've sat in some not so great panels, and sometimes the panel chair is the person that actually is the only one that has a say, as in, well, we can't really ask them that. Well, why can't we ask them that? Because actually, if that's flagged for me as an issue, right, and I'm talking about things like, if you've got a question that you really want to ask, then, there's that. And then you've got the other thing as well, that in terms of, I know that, you have to, if you know somebody who comes along to the panel, but how many times have I seen the same person sitting on the panel review who's been there the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that. So actually, they're aware of the family. The family, they may have, connected with them in some way, shape, or form. That's not independent. No. I know it's not a conflict, but it's also not independent. If they've watched that family grow, and maybe things have happened and they've had issues and blah blah. So and in terms of allegations, I'm grateful not to have. I've had things investigated. I'm not even sure they were called allegations. I think that's how loose it was, and I think that again, that the independence thing, and that if it was a private limited company dealing with a complaint about their sausage rolls, I'm just pulling an example out there here. I'm not comparing our children to sausage rolls. I'm just saying, then that's fine. That could be done internally. That could be done internally. Fine. Go through your process. Blah blah. When it's a child's life and a foster carer's life that's actually affected, and that was one of the main reasons why I stopped fostering, was the risk and the thought of actually somebody putting in a false allegation. It's I've never been arrested in my life, touch wood.
No.
Never going to happen. The thought of it happening to me scares the living crap out of me. In the same way as a foster carer, an allegation made against me that wasn't true, that scared the crap. And I thought, is it worth living with that in your mind all the time while you're trying to do the job
they live with? That is what carers live with, and that is why we have to change it, because carers are not, first of all, they're not going to keep them, and we're seeing that through the figures. Secondly, it affects everything. It affects your daily life, it affects your work with the children, it affects your advocating them. We have to, of course, balance that up with protecting children. But so we have to somewhere find a way through the ridiculous lists of allegations. I mean, why were yours? Just a question, Scott. What did you do to upset them?
It was an interpretation of something that hadn't happened. So, young person, I'm not going to name them because they're still in the family, but young person had said that when we were doing the kind of, because we were very lucky to do introductions with the child, and we had to stay in a hotel, came back to the hotel, and obviously part of it was getting used to us and blah blah. Anyway, long story short, reported back that I was still in bed naked. I wasn't in bed naked. I was hiding under the duvet to surprise them. In the hotel room kind of thing. And it just went from there really to the point where actually it was quite upsetting.
I can imagine that was horribly upsetting because of the undertones. And the other thing with an allegation as well, that'll stay on your record ad infinitum. They say 10 years, but that'll stay on your record ad infinitum. And these are disciplinary procedures. There's no way that we can get around that. I know that everyone likes to dress fostering up as something different, but it isn't that anymore. And these are disciplinary procedures. And, you cannot play with people's lives like this. And if you're having a disciplinary, you just did a really prime example with me, Scott. If you rewind a bit, you said, I think it was a complaint, allegation, I don't know, standard care, I don't know. You should have known all that.
Absolutely.
You should have known exactly what that was all about. You should have been told what it was all about. Also, that this knee-jerk reaction with, if the child had had an independent psychologist or someone speak to them, they probably could have sat there, trained to understand what the child meant by what they said, and if they felt they had been harmed. Social workers have to have so many hats on, and many of them aren't their own, and that's not fair on them either.
Yeah. It feels really, I mean, I do have good examples of when
yes, sorry,
it's okay, just clearing your throat there, Sarah.
Dog demanding to go out.
No, I was going to say, I've got good examples of when it can work really well, where an allegation was made by a child to a third-party professional. Within an hour and a half, everyone who needed to talk about it had got together in a room and gone, does this add up? No, it doesn't. What we're going to do to make sure that everything is okay, X, Y, Z. So within 2.5 hours, done.
Fantastic.
Absolutely done.
Yeah,
report back in a week, make sure you do all the things.
Exactly the model. But unfortunately, an awful lot of allegations aren't about that.
Yeah.
They are about somebody wanted to transfer. Oh, the biggest one as well, if you've raised a complaint against a social worker, or there's been some bad practice or anything like that, woe betide you if you do that. The whistleblowing, it's about relationships breaking down. There is a huge part of the allegations that is where the process is misused. Plus, also, if you have a disciplinary procedure or you're charged with something in court or whatever, you can be guilty, not guilty. With a foster care, you've always got a stain on your record. It is either unfounded, unsubstantiated. It's never not, it didn't happen. It's never not guilty. It's never, no, it didn't happen. It's a little shadow that follows you around, like a sort of, no smoke without fire. And also, I mean, we've got a case going on at the moment. A paediatrician bumped into a new social worker and they didn't get on terribly well. The top guy in the hospitals, the lead in child safeguarding. And she literally hadn't done a job properly, then blamed the foster carers about it. He was out of his job for 3 months. They suspended him because she said he'd harmed a child. So we have to follow through with, we have to get a balance somewhere, but the balance is not there right now.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the guidelines for Ireland, and I know that you guys in the UK, but interestingly, allegations in Ireland are dealt with by TUSLA, as are appeals dealt with by TUSLA. Now, TUSLA is a national organisation, a little bit like Children's Services, but it's national. So it's not even independent in most other countries either. And I mean, they
haven't got the best reputation amongst foster carers.
No, they don't. They don't have the best reputation at all, to be honest. But I have to be very careful because I work from kind of. But anyway,
quickly moving on. One of the things that, I mean, I'm slightly nervous around because the way you're characterizing it, Sarah, is that actually that there are legitimate concerns, but also there's a significant portion them being used as a tool to punish foster carers. And I'll be honest, I've just never seen that. And maybe I work in a small independent foster care agency, not for profit, just as for the trolls who troll me. Just to make that clear.
And it's a good agency. It's a good service as well.
Well, we do our best, we do our best for the children, but also in professionally. And so I find it really hard to sort of just take that in, this idea that it's being used by professionals as a tool to punish foster carers. Is that what you're saying? Is that?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I am. Yes. And I'm not saying, I can't give you a percentage of that. I can't say how many, but also if you think of it like that as well, they're using the children to do that.
Because that mischaracterizes children as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that's not okay. I have dealt with thousands of allegations, as have the union, I was in. So I had to stop doing it actually because I got overwhelmed with it and burnt out with it because I couldn't hear one story after the other. Also, what you've got to understand is that these people go for a very long assessment, and then they go and see a panel, and then the ADM. These people don't step into fostering to abuse children. Some might, and they probably, will slip the net. A teeny proportion that might happen. And that's a rare occurrence. Most of these are good people who have come in to, to help, to step up, to whatever, where a lot of others aren't doing. But also the other really bad thing as well is just this horrible lack of education. I mean, we had a question in the survey about, does your local authority abide by the national minimum standards? I can't even begin to tell you how many foster carers said, what are they?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can kind of.
Well,
get
actually,
that
one of the comments actually said, "Rubbish. I've learned more off the internet when it comes to national minimum standards." So which I think is quite, that's a very foster carey thing to say, isn't it? Rubbish.
I know, that we the feedback, 14,500, we went through them all, and honestly, we couldn't have, they're not fake. We couldn't have written them.
Yeah. It's really quite sobering, isn't it? And I mean, this is like the anti-fostering podcast, isn't it? Come on, like the actually actively people deregistering as they're listening.
Hopefully not.
But listen, people are active. I can't even tell you how many people come up to me and say, I'm on my last charge. When this one's done, I'm done. There's a huge number of saying that at the moment. But this is not, I mean, I am vehemently pro-recruitment. I'm vehemently pro-fostering. I love it. I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't. I'm not an activist, I've had me little go at it, but that's not me, really. I just could see that it's not working. How can we make it work better? And then I couldn't believe the resistance you come across when you say, look, actually, us lot, we could really contribute to improving things. Oh, no, you're just get back in the box. You're just a foster carer. That's what's been good about this year. I think we're breaking out of that mold, and that is exciting because I know that we can bring solutions and not just problems.
Because sorry.
So I was just going to ask Sarah there, you've still got someone in your care, haven't you?
No.
Or you did? No. So no. Is that a recent thing, or?
So about a year or so ago, we just
okay.
we were on a break, and also then I have so much to do with FosterWiki. I've done it for 16 years of teens, and so I've got that.
Yeah, but I was interested to know when you were kind of with an agency, how easily you rubbed along with a social worker.
How they what?
How easily you rubbed along with a social worker, given that I'm interested to know.
So I went with Hampshire for 12 years. I had two social workers, and I only lost the first because she moved up to ATM. And I got on fabulously, professionally, really well with them. I think they handpicked them for me because, who are we going to send to Sarah? But I had extremely good experience of my social workers in Hampshire. Not so great with the children's social workers always, but fantastic with my own social workers. And I think what that says as well is that I haven't got an axe to grind. It's not my own experience that's making. I mean, obviously my own experience in terms of let's leave that to the professionals, dear, and stuff. I've had my fair share of that.
Yeah.
But I had an incredible. I tell you what, as well. I suppose because coming from a psychotherapeutic background, I had an awful lot of knowledge on trauma, and I worked therapeutically with children. So I realised how much that helped. And I was aghast that other people could work with young children that were so traumatized without any of that training. Secondly, I came from a team in the NHS where I was a manager. I was, had a fantastic team around me. Didn't really realize it till I left it. But I knew the value of working professionally with people and how to do it. And so few foster carers understand that, because I could hold my own, and I could, I had reasoned arguments for everything. I mean, I think they would have, when I first started with the uni in the early days, I got a lot of, I got more than my fair share of unannounced visits. with my social worker saying, I said, okay then, so, why have you been sent? 6 o'clock on a Friday night, I've already had 3 unannounced in the last 4 weeks. So she said, well, I've just been sent to tell you to tone it down.
It's like gangster tactics, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I said, have you any idea what that would do to me? She said, yes, I know, I've told them. But after a while, because I could give a reasoned argument, I could explain why I was doing something and why it could be better, and everything child focused, always bringing it back to the child. A lot of foster carers will, be angry at the way they're treated, and I often say to them, don't do that because nobody cares. So you just bring it back to the children, because actually that's what you're angry about the most. They're angry about not getting the support for their children, the mental health of their children. It always comes back to that. And so I know how when it can really work. Although I will say that professionals in our sector don't always fare well if they seem to be too knowledgeable or, know a lot, or
it's threatening, isn't it,
to navigate? Yes, yeah.
I was thinking about the conversation because we've sort of talked about the needs of children, the needs of foster carers, and we've sort of separated them out really quite. And I think that's one of the challenges of social carers, that we very clearly separate children from adults.
Yeah.
And I think we see this in adoption, or I see this in fostering. And so even in my recent inspection, which I can't possibly comment on, it's interesting how if I spoke too much about my carers, there was kind of this like, oh, I need to come back and talk about children. But it surely it has to be true that children will never do well if the adults are not doing well.
Absolutely. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? And also, I appreciate that we're all here to do it for the children, and that's really, really important. However, it doesn't mean that we should abuse other set people. And we shouldn't bully them. We shouldn't intimidate them. We shouldn't make them live in a climate of fear. Why is it that because we are supposed to focus on the children, it makes that all right? And you're absolutely right. Bullied, intimidated, scared foster carers are not going to give their best to the children. And also, this is one of the reasons, allegations, of course, is why there's nowhere to put teenagers.
Yeah.
Would you say that, Scott? Because you, as a foster carer, are actively nervous about.
You remember well. Well, we just said we're not doing it. We are not doing teenagers,
and it was because of the allegations.
Well, it was partly that, but it was partly the fear of the unknown as well. Because the agency we were with, they would mainly be out of county. The young children, young people that they placed. So that was a bit tricky when you bear in mind we lived, I wouldn't say the country, but we lived kind of, definitely more rural than the city.
Well, we were very rural, 6 miles from the nearest town.
Yeah, and I think that scared the living daylights out of me, the fact that they go off or, end up, all that sort of stuff.
They do,
But I think as well, and this is nothing against teenagers. I mean, I think I've thrived as a parent with teenagers rather than when they were younger, if I'm being honest. But I think part of that is to do with the fact that they've had that kind of level of parents for quite a while, rather than just being, literally shipped out to somebody in the middle of nowhere that they don't know, and they've got to, they can't go anywhere without them being taken anywhere, and the kind of loss of all that kind of freedom and what have you. So for me, I think there's a lot of things going on for foster carers who may be asked to consider older children or teenagers, but that's not to say that there aren't people out there that can do it.
Well,
I mean, I probably could do it.
16 years, and it was incredibly hard, incredibly heartbreaking, incredibly everything. But I would never swap those 16 years for anything. And we had a call the day before yesterday from one of our young people who's now got her own 3 children and a lovely partner. And every Christmas Eve, our children, we'd go ice skating with them. And my husband, who's a good skater, would teach all the young people to skate. Well, you never think that you get a teenager that's absconding and, on every class A drug going to go to the skating rink, but they would, and then they'd really get into it. And we buy them some boots, and it was a sort of time when they could just be a child again, I think, and not have to feel so, fight or flight. And every Christmas Eve, we go for a skate with our Christmas hats on. And she remembered that forever. And she said one thing that she's got, she lost everything. She left us when she was about 17 and went into the wilderness for a couple of years. But the one thing in all those moves she's kept were her little white skates. Oh, and she said to us, you showed me how to be a parent. And there's no social worker in sight. She's very happy, got these 3 beautiful kids. And so I know that it can really, really work. But do you know why I know it can work? Because I know what is needed to make it work, because I've done it. And because I had other qualifications, I'm not saying you have to have a qualification in that, but because I had that kind of training and background, I know what's needed. But has anyone ever listened to me? All they do is they have these new systems coming along, especially in the teenage thing. How many models have we seen to, look after teenagers? From the USA, from the Oregon model to, and they're always run by people who've never fostered, let alone ever fostered a teenager. And we have to have that boots on the ground experience, and experience that's rooted in practice, frontline practice, to understand how it really works. And I think we have swayed again from the allegations impact report.
We have indeed. And to be honest with you, I've just got a message off my wife saying, your tea's ready and you need to take it. So that, so that is the danger of doing the podcast at this time of night.
5 o'clock.
My domestic life crashes like an iceberg into the ship, which is the Fostering podcast. So that was a reference for Scott and his Poseidon adventure.
Thank you.
Sarah,
still haven't talked about that yet.
Well, we shouldn't arrange this on air, but Scott, are you free next week to do an end of the year podcast?
I'm sure I can be. It's not like we're doing much else.
I'll speak to your agent.
Yes, do. Yes.
Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and as always, it's absolutely fun. But I feel like we're just scratching the surface. If only we had comfortable seats and a real podcast studio.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? We could just sit there all day, chewing the fat.
Really cool.
Yeah. I might be moving house, Scott. Cool. And if we do, I might set up a proper podcast studio with cities and things.
Why?
Sarah,
why would you do that? Who's going to come to your house?
Oh, shut up. Sarah would. Santa would.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Santa's there. I'll be there. Yeah. Right, sure.
Excellent.
I can sit on his knee. Oh, no, that's not appropriate right now.
I'm sure there's a form you'd have to fill in.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Take that bit out. Yeah.
No, that's it. That's in. That's
in. That's gone.
Got you now. It's in the ether. It's gone. Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Like you say, it's so hard fostering, isn't it? Because you just go round in circles and off on tangents. And that's why I'm focused on making this better. But I do, our last word is, the children are at the front of this and they drive everything that we do. And
yes.
And you'll find nearly all the foster carers are the same. It drives what they do. And I tell you what, they do it despite the system, not because of it. And I think we need to take our hats off to them for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Smashing. It's been absolutely lovely to speak to you again.
Thank you for having me.
I do hope so look after yourself. And as always, you're always welcome back next year when you're creating mischief and mayhem wherever you go. So, and if we won't see you, but have a great new year, and we'll speak to you in 2025.
Yeah, look forward to it. See you then.
See you, Sarah. Thank you. Bye. Bye.